Eureka!
Oh, I'm right there with you. That show has its flaws to be sure, but it's a hell of a lot better than this. This is Eddie, who saves Locke's bacon when he's pulled over by a cop who is rather oddly insistent on finding something to arrest him for. Unusually, this will actually make sense later, but it still doesn't stop this whole flashback from being one of the biggest wastes of time in the show's history. Locke's currently living in the woods with a bunch of new age retro hippies. You know, the kind of people who laze around all day and say things like, "You can't hug whales with nuclear weapons." And another piece of the puzzle falls into place because Lord knows I'd want to whack a few people on the head if I spent any time with these guys. After 6 weeks, Eddie figures out the group has something weird going on in a greenhouse and tells Locke he thinks it's a bomb. Though it turns out it's just a bunch of weed. From hippies? No! But before that can go farther, the people in charge discover that Eddie's a cop, and it is hilarious to see them turn on a dime from happy pot-smoking hippies to "I will rip off your skin and use it as a coat." Locke's response is to try to murder Eddie for doing his job and shutting down a pot farm. Our hero. Eddie starts walking away, and the flashback actually ends on a cliffhanger regarding whether Locke killed him. And as the final insult, this whole time in his life is never visited again, and that cliffhanger is never resolved. Locke wakes up in the jungle in a recreation of the opening scene of the whole series, except instead of Vincent, we get a naked Desmond. Well, that should make some of the fans happy at least. And then Locke is whacked by Echo's stick. That's about as clear a sign from God as you could hope for that he sucks. He gets back to camp and grabs a few things, which gets Claire to order Charlie to find out what's up. And why can't you ask yourself exactly? She's picked up the whole girlfriend role pretty fast.
So you're gone for a whole day after a massive hatch detonation. You don't call, you don't write.
Oh God, he's trying to make that into a catchphrase, isn't he? Shut up, Charlie! It turns out Locke can't talk, which is kinda weird as it will turn out this didn't happen to Desmond or Echo. He's now convinced that he needs to speak to the island because that's how warped his mind has become. I really have no idea what put this in his head, but since it's already been made clear that jumping to these kind of conclusions is kind of his thing, I'll let it go. He also asks Charlie to stand guard, and he initially refuses because...
You do remember repeatedly punching me in the face and accusing me of using heroin when I was not.
Ah, so we're just blatantly retconning that now, are we? Good to know, but still, shut up, Charlie. The standing guard thing is because Locke's built a sweat lodge inside the church frame and includes a pretty funny reference to Dominic Monaghan's role in The Lord of the Rings, as well as the film Altered States, which I'd guess too few people actually got. Oh, and suddenly Charlie's okay with the whole guard thing. I guess Locke knocked him on the head off screen or something. Inside, Locke takes some of the same drugs he pushed on Boone, and speaking of which, here he is. Oh, Ian Somerhalder, you still have no idea that the role of your lifetime in the Vampire Diaries is still ahead of you. Sadly, he then says this.
You're sorry. That's okay. But I was the sacrifice the island demanded.
So they are now so desperate to have people see Locke as a hero in this story that they're having Boone himself let him off the hook for his own murder, using the same pathetic excuse that Locke pulled out of his own ass. Fuck you! Next is a really trippy dream sequence, none of which means anything, so I'll just skip that and say Locke ends up convinced that he has to save Echo. Oh, and he can suddenly talk again, so what was the point of him not being able to talk, especially since we never find out why? They find Echo's cross, and Locke declares he was dragged through the spot by a polar bear. And he knows this how? They really might as well just have Joe Quesada come out and declare that it's magic and they don't have to explain it. He also tells Charlie he'd better go back so he doesn't end up like Boone. Well, don't order him into a situation that looks like it'll get him killed, and it probably won't happen, wouldn't you say? They find the swan, which is now just a giant hole in the ground, which officially means there won't be any more crap about pushing the key. Glory, hallelujah! Then they get chased by a bear, played by a particularly unconvincing taxidermy specimen even with all the editing tricks used, and finally Locke almost kills Hurley. Good thing he wasn't aiming for his head, he's got some real experience there. He tells them all what happened, and naturally Locke can barely be bothered to even feign interest. He'd fit right in with the others more every day. As Hurley goes back to the beach, Locke and Charlie find the bear's cave and have this extremely awkward conversation about why either of them is doing this or wants to do this, and neither of them even come close to making a point, so I'll skip to Hurley running into Desmond and having a really stupid scene based entirely on the idea that naked people are inherently funny. Oh, and why did Desmond's clothes get vaporized and not Locke's or Echo's anyway? In the cave, Locke runs into a Tonka truck, and seriously, I've got nothing. It's literally like the episode came in a minute short, so the writer decided to put in the first thing his eyes fell on in his kid's bedroom. And of course, it never becomes anything more than that. He finds Echo and fights the bear off with a hairspray torch. Okay, that was pretty awesome. Hurley gets the whole story from Desmond and actually brings up the question of why he, Locke, and Echo didn't implode along with the Swan. Why even do that if you're not going to give us any payoff? Desmond also brings up Locke saying he would rescue the people at the Hydra, but of course Hurley has no idea what he's talking about, and for once that's actually deliberate.
I burned that bear pretty good.
It's fun harming animals. At this point, I'm seriously starting to think we need to keep an eye on some of these writers before they go into a clock tower. Locke has a chat with Echo where he reveals that he is completely convinced that he would have stopped everyone getting captured if he'd gone with them. Man, is that one over-healthy ego. And then Charlie shows up and it's revealed that Echo's actually been unconscious the whole time. So what was really going on there? No idea. They all get back and Hurley tells everyone what happened. They're all upset, including these two people that we've never seen before. I'll get to them soon enough, but for now the important thing is that Locke gives the speech that Desmond was talking about, indicating that he saw the future. Not that Hurley tells anyone about this, even when directly asked by Charlie. Sometimes it's really fun to imagine what dinner conversations are like for these writers. My score for Further Instructions is 1 out of 10. It's actually a pretty good microcosm of the whole series, as more than perhaps any other episode, it comes off like it was written using Mad Libs, with all kinds of random weird crap occurring purely for its own sake, never to be brought up again. The flashback reaches new depths of having nothing to do with anything, and even ends on a cliffhanger that will never be resolved, and even the island story will be rendered completely pointless in just 2 episodes when Echo is killed. The episode was actually intended to air second in the season, and the change was definitely for the better. The 1-2 punch of this episode after A Tale of Two Cities would undoubtedly have had an even worse effect on the show's ratings than they actually suffered, and putting the far superior Glass Ballerina between them actually allowed Season 3 to start off with at least some sense of momentum. This is truly a new low, but believe it or not, that 0 grade episode is still waiting for us, and it is so much worse. Be very afraid.